See if I can get this going here. Hi. So welcome to Philadelphia Walks PTSD. My name is Sharon Cole, or Sharon or Cole, whatever you want to refer to me as. No big deal, in a good way. I don't care. I've been called everything under the sun. Rat, pig, horse, cow, dinosaur, lizard, whatever. Whatever they mean to different groups of people, I have no idea what they mean to different groups of people, and different groups of people have a different idea of what they mean. So with that said, this is day, whatever it is. Let's see. I kind of set this up really quick this morning. It's Wednesday, so it's day 116 of my one video each day, 365-day campaign. Let me write that in here, day 116. Day 116. That'll show up on the side eventually. So it is day 116 of my one video each day, 365-day ask for money, to raise money for myself in order to survive over the long term. I find work in different capacities, but because of what began in 2011, the fourth Monday, January of, it's been quite a ride, I guess, a torturous ride, a clown show, a shit show is what some people would say. The dog theme running rampant. Me kind of being, I'm saying kind of because women tend to minimize things, or victims of a bad situation tend to minimize because they already can hear the naysayers or the people who say it wasn't that bad, and they would have no idea. This thing was so bad, technically the United States government probably should step in and owe me, I don't know what to say. I would actually say billions. I know that sounds crazy to some people, but I started to realize how bad this was, and if I had a good Jewish lawyer, as they say, if they were to calculate all the pain and suffering, mental anguish, death threats, terroristic tactics against me that aren't texted or something, it's done with innuendo and nuance and actual orchestrated events, incredibly hard to prove. Conspiracies, people who actually, collectively agree to do something to someone, street theater skits, what have you, people who might have certain privileges and they're able to find out information about you in a way that most people would never even fathom, and then they terrorize you with that information out on the streets. Then we have a whole other category of things, and we'll do that example today. There's a 72,000 layer cake of things I was terrorized with on a daily, minute-by-minute basis. I'm so not kidding. The city looks a lot different today. Back in 2011 and onward, when we even started with a blizzard and snow that kept people in a cabin fever situation until like May of 2011. So it was like a crazy year all around. But what I will start with is, of course, as always, I was made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment the fourth Monday of January 2011. There was a series of orchestrated events, and yes, they were orchestrated. I'd like to know who set that up, because that would be one of the number one people who needs to pay up. And hey, money talks. That's all I need. They know they went after someone who's liberal. I don't like to see people suffer. I want to know what happened. I want to know what the problem is. I don't want to be dragged through some court case and watch people be put in jail. And they use that to their advantage, because I would still be torn. Say there's a big court case and certain people took the fall for this thing and they made it so massive. It's church in a way. There's a church element of, there's always doubt because there are so many people. You can't pin one person with one major crime per se. And also me as a normal, sensitive person, I would want to know exactly, I would want to know 100% who set this off. Because a whole bunch of other people could look guilty or this, that, and the other, and they're not really part of the problem. Or people are participating because they're brainwashed, like a cult or a gang or certain people who belong to certain groups, because everybody has a different life journey and things force people in certain directions. And I know there are entities way up there, community people, and they're lots of influences in this world, and people wind up in all kinds of places. Sometimes people wind up winning prize, they're prize winning people, but they're still heavily influenced, and they could be pulled along by the puppet masters. So should they get credit? And then there are people who wind up in the worst sections of the earth. Kensington, do they have to take responsibility, or did somebody pull them along there? We won't get into it, but as if that weren't enough, me being scared, that fourth Monday of January 2011, the games commenced after that. I'm calling my mom, we're sorry, the phone number you tried to reach has been disconnected. That adds to the horror film element, the terror, all kinds of things went on. People I had met in the couple years leading up to this event, they didn't behave in ways that I would expect. If someone called me, I would be like, hey, if everybody's local and it doesn't cost money to get together, do you want to, we can have dinner, you want to get coffee, anything to help you feel better and safer. You can stay here if you want for a while, or whatever it takes. Do you want us to come back to the apartment with you? Maybe it's when you're scared out of your apartment, or say you're burglarized or made to believe you'd be murdered, you don't necessarily want to return to the apartment. That's a very normal thing. So anyway, with that said, so much went on. It was ridiculous. This entire city and many other cities, maybe lockdown during the pandemic, was sort of a payback. It was a byproduct of the pandemic, but I'm wondering if people who are used to being out here terrorizing people on purpose, of course, I wasn't in Philly during that time, but in other parts of the world, I'm wondering what these people who are used to colluding with other people, oh my God, now they're stuck at home. Now they probably were on Zoom right quick, trying to meet up with people through Zoom. How can we bully people on Zoom meetings? I want to know if these people suffered because the world was on lockdown for almost 2 years. So anyway, part of the harassment and this, gang stalking group community harassment would be, say things are going on and you're wondering, like, something doesn't seem right with my mom being in the hospital, or my aunt being in the hospital, or certain things that come up, or even a niece in a hospital. I wonder, I see these signs that say malpractice, they make it seem like it's a candy shop out there. Something probably went wrong so check to see if you have a case, check to see if you have a case, check to see if you have a case. I was like, I wonder if people are due money while they suffer at the hands of people in the medical industry. And how do you prove that? Usually there are big cases like a piece of cloth is left in someone after an operation, or I don't know anything about that world. But I do know people wind up with big cases, and sadly, there are people who suffer physically for the rest of their lives because of the medical industry being too earnest, maybe, or being a little too something, or human error, could be a basic one. I think that's taken into consideration, and I kind of wonder if some of the lawyers already know the reputations of some physicians, surgeons, or what have you out there, and they would already know, like, oh, this is a fly-by-night, this person knows how to nickel and dime the insurance company, or we already know this person has a certain attitude, or they would know if someone's basically a good surgeon, and it's like, you're kidding, I wonder how he made that mistake. That's, it's highly unusual, it's an actual mistake. Where does the responsibility lie? Since they have all these checks and balances and all these people around a table, I guess, so anyway, with that said, there's so much messaging in Philadelphia about malpractices, and there's so many billboards, and all of this will get people excited only to be let down. Because how do you get a case? I have yet to find out, because for many years I would have never I was too tortured by other things, and things would come up, and I'm like, I'm wondering if there's something there, because it's kind of odd they did this to my mom. Is that weird? I don't know anything about the medical industry. Is that a weird thing? That doesn't seem right. Somehow it doesn't seem right that she's going to sit around for the rest of her life with a fistula pumping in her arm with a dialysis that never happened. If you go so far as to put a fistula in the arm, shouldn't dialysis then come after that? So in my mom's case, they put a fistula in her arm, believing that dialysis was coming, and I think they timed it. I think they wanted to see. I don't want. I actually think there are people watch. It is like Santa Claus ish. Say there are people testing people, or kind of seeing how people, almost like scientists in the air. Um, so here I am being run around the streets of Philadelphia dog walking. I can't figure out how to do. I make just enough money just to pay to keep a roof over my head and eat. And it's like, I want to be able to visit my mom. I want to be able to do this. I don't know how to do that, because if I do, then I would have to find someone to take the dog walks. It's a whole thing where whoever they are, they can create a situation where you don't even trust, like, leaving your apartment, like going anywhere. You're afraid to go anywhere, in case you lose business, or in case so anyway, my mom wound up with a fistula in her arm, and they put her through all these hoops and everything. And then this was like in the fall of, we'll say 2015-ish. Either 2014 or 2015, but in the fall, we'll say of 2015, towards the winter, they put a fistula in her arm, which is preparation for dialysis. They were saying her kidneys weren't operating correctly, or whatever, kidney. I think you have two, but I'm not sure. So anyway, into January, they test her levels again, and they decide all of a sudden her levels are totally fine. So nope, we don't need to do the dialysis. But I think it's a process of draining someone and killing someone off over time, because that is a lot of stress on the body to just sit there with a fistula in your arm. This is a pump thing that pumps in with your vein and everything. It's really gross. And I got the implication, like, should I call someone? Like, I never did anything until I moved to Florida, when I really saw what it looked like. I was like, she has to sit around with that thing. That surely affects someone's ability to maneuver, to enjoy life. You have to wind up on all kinds of prescription pills for all kinds, just to sort of like tolerate the day. So I did call a couple places in Florida, because they have billboards all over the place. I was like, I wonder if people can get money for this. Call and No, I forget the wording, but you basically call a call center. So you have like a cheap, uneducated paralegal or maybe lawyer who wound up on the call center at some of these. I was like, I guess I'll just call one of these places, since they advertise so heavily, as if. Very abusive process. And you feel like a loser, because it's like, well, I actually don't know anything about the medical industry, so I don't know what to expect, but something seems wrong. So I'm calling around, nope, 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 nope. And I'm wondering if in different areas, if it's normalized. Like, some people would say that's the process they took is kind of unusual. It's kind of uncool. It's bad judgment. We have a world that minimizes things in order to keep people in business. Some people would say, nope, I wouldn't do that. I would know certain, her levels were at a certain place. It's time, put the fistula in. We are doing dialysis. Not, let's put the fistula in and then see. That seems logical to me, the latter. But we have an industry that will normalize procedures to make it okay for them to have a Land Rover. So I had all this. One of the reasons also that I called is I had gone through all this stuff in my mom's closet, because I was on this mission to like find answers, or like, I also brought some stuff down. I was trying to fit my stuff into her closet, and I found all this paperwork, and it's somewhere in her process, something didn't add up correctly. And we had a cousin who was on dialysis for many years. He actually had a kidney removed, I believe, and was waiting for a transplant. And I'm wondering if her being in Florida brought on a process, and yes, I'll say it, that would have never occurred in another state. So I do believe my mom was owed money. She was suffering there with with a very low Social Security, a woman who worked all these years, showed up as she worked. She met my dad working. She worked after the birth of her first child in order to help my dad help his mom. And then after I was born, she had to start work again because of a divorce. And then she worked from 1972-ish. I was born in 70, so 71, 72-ish. And then she was working, all the way until she kind of desperately needed to retire and just move away. And then she worked after her retirement as a food sample lady in Florida. She couldn't really make ends meet after retired. There was no pension. She was a secretary for a place that really didn't offer. They might have offered options like you can take early retirement and then a payout, or I don't feel like she paid into a pension per se. It's not the same as like if you work at a bank, which my dad did, and everything's perfect, and he was considered an officer at the bank. So these people are given more. A secretary and a woman is going to suffer, period. So in addition, my mom would then go into the hospital, and weird that she was in ICU or ICU, and weird things unfolded. And I'm like, I can't even watch because some of these people it's almost like they watch too many episodes of some sort of hospital drama, and they were acting out character. It got really weird at some point because I'm like, what? This person is putting on such a show as opposed to just being real. It's hard to explain. It starts to get weird because you're like, what happened to the real people? Like, is Gainesville, Florida filled with a bunch of people and all they know how to do is project? I even had someone talk to me about a DNR while in the ICU. A DNR is do not resuscitate, should that come up. And I don't know the process, so luckily I was able to talk to my dad, and he said that it's normal that they'll bring it up regardless because you're in ICU. So that made me feel better. But a woman brought it up, and it wasn't her place to bring it up. There was a nurse or whatever who brought it up, and then the doctor came in and brought it up, and he acted as if she hadn't brought it up. I don't know if he knew that she brought it up, but it was almost like he was the one who was supposed to bring it up. I was like, I just got yelled at. I was in there a lot visiting for long periods of time. And I felt like I was being abused and actually yelled at by the head nurse. Like, you do know there's a DNR. And I'm like, actually, I don't. And you do know this, and you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to make decisions. I was like, am I on Candy Camp? I swear to God, the world has gone mad. The doctor was more normal. The actual physician came in and said, so we need to talk about the DNR and blah, blah, blah. And that seemed like a normal process. I don't know what got into the head nurse. I actually showed up and sat there and didn't bother anyone. And sometimes did the job of other nurses because if my mom would beep or whatever, like I would pull up the blankets or I don't know. So flash forward to my mom winds up passing away ultimately over a long period of time of hospital, rehabilitation, hospital. So they wanted to put her into physical therapy, select physical therapy. It used to be Shands physical therapy. This is in Gainesville, Florida. And they changed it to select. Were you selected to be mistreated? And every time she was funneled back through ER, and every time she had to come back into the hospital through ER, it was ER, hospital, physical therapy, ER, hospital, physical therapy, ER, hospital, and then hospice care at home. They kept thinking they could release her into physical therapy, and then she'd have to go through the ER, and that's incredibly traumatic, that experience. And they don't always have a bed in ER, so you're like on the wall. And my mom, every time she was trembling like this, every time she was in ER, they pricked her 1,000,000 times, like too much. It was a teaching hospital. So teaching hospitals, it's possible that they might go overboard on things to teach people how to do things. I would recommend, if you can, never go into a teaching hospital. No offense, let them practice on somebody else. In Select, the people came in who resembled, like to a T, people I knew in Philadelphia. I met someone named Sohelia here in Philadelphia, and I volunteered with a group that she sort of headed up at the time called Team Philadelphia. And one of the head physical therapists to walk in to Select Physical Therapy was actually a guy. And as soon as he walked in, I was like, God, he could be Sohelia's twin brother. And things seemed like dumb and simple. Like the speech therapist would come in, and somehow the speech therapist, and I realized I don't have education in this field, but I almost felt like they made her feel dumb because it was too stupid. She didn't really have a problem with speech. It was more other motions and stuff, or they would try to get her to go up to the shower, and it was like they didn't have a process. It was just like, okay, now we're just going to get you to go to the shower without this like preparation or warming up of the body. Like in my mind, you would warm up the body with maybe a couple leg movements, a couple arm movements, and then get the walker, go to the shower in the bathroom. No, just cold like that. We're going to go straight to the shower. I'm pretty sure I'm right. What's the difference? So, and then there was a woman who came in to Select, and she was abusive. And I felt like she was treating my mom roughly, and used a few words, and I was like, God, I didn't know what to say. I actually did write a note, I think, later to the human resources or whatever, because they did ask for feedback. I was like, well, there was one or two, and it was during her time period that my mom got sent back. I left for a little while and then would come back later. I didn't sit for like 8 hours a day every day. I would do like, a few hours here, a few hours there. I'd go back and forth. I was also trying to work at the time. Shipped. I was delivering for Shipped, and this was all during the pandemic. Something must have happened when I left for like an hour, 2 hours. I get a call, or I call in. Oh no, something happened. No, they did call. We worried that she was having an episode, like some episode with the brain maybe. So we sent her back. I don't know what to say. My aunt wound up in there twice. My mom passed away on July 29th of 2020. My dad went into the hospital because of coronavirus. This was in a southern town in Florida, more southern in Florida. We don't want to get into that because I'm wondering if there could be false positives on a quickie rapid COVID test. And then maybe you live in a community where people are willing to play along and can cause symptoms. I've experienced weird things on my body, and I'm like, where'd that come? That is weird. Where'd that come from? And you can tell it's not like, it's hard to explain. But anyway, I don't know what to say about my dad. All I got was the image of the Pink Floyd thing where the two men are shaking hands, like the musician shook hands with the devil, carrying the briefcase, and there's flames all over the place. That's the image I got from my dad when he said that he tested positive. And it kind of flashed through my brain. And I hadn't thought about that image in a long time. That's an old album from years ago. That's what I got. Like when your number's up, or you made a deal and now it's time, that's pretty scary stuff. Especially if you don't even know. Say you're someone who's like, I didn't know I made a deal. I don't know. What am I supposed to? Or they make it seem that way. So also my aunt, she was in the hospital twice, once the day after my dad passed away, and she was in there for the entire week of Christmas, leading up to Christmas, and then the day after Christmas. And she came back. Weird stuff happened there with my phone, and I thought she was coming down because I got a text from her phone to my phone, but she says she never texted it. She's like, I didn't text anything. And by the looks of her, she didn't, because she was so like weakened and like barely made it down to the lobby where I picked her up I was using my mom's car. That it's like, I actually don't think she texted and forgot. Like How did the text come from her phone? It is part of a family plan, but I don't know if you can hook into somebody else's phone and make it seem like someone's coming down. That's creepy and weird. The second time my aunt would go in would be after she was vaccinated twice for the COVID. Then she always had asthma her whole life, and that was part of the reason that would send her into the ER. So she goes in. At some point in time, I decided to visit her. Her sons came in to visit her and everything. And her name is really Margaret Jane, or was Margaret Jane. It would have been Margaret Jane Young Paulin, and then Kirk would be her second marriage. And they had Margarot instead of Margaret on the whiteboard. And I just walked in after they had intubated her, and her hand, she was like, this is a frail, like 102-pound woman, 84 years old. And I did ask, like, I asked them straight out, is it normal that our hands are doing this? Like, she was doing this, and this tube is down our throat. I guess it's intubation. This is what I learned along the way. And they said, yes, it's normal. We'll give her more anesthesia or whatever it is, more sedate her. I would talk to my stepmother later. I actually want to cry for some reason. Because how much suffering and no payback for this family. I would later talk to my stepmother because of my dad having passed away and other reasons. And I was describing what happened to my Aunt Jane. And she said, oh, God, do you think they would sedate her more in advance? It seems like they went light on the sedation. I kind of buy that. But they had Margarot on the whiteboard, not Margaret. North Florida Regional. I actually think they owe people money, particularly me, because I feel like I did a lot of caretaking, and also I'm the one that witnessed that. Then the thoughts will come through like, I wonder if my greedy cousins would capitalize on a lawsuit while I sit here suffering and doing all kinds of things, and or other people in my family have suffered. I actually believe at the hands of those people. Would they secretly gain from some sort of insurance claim or whatever you call it, some lawsuit? Well, I'm sitting here wondering where to live, being kicked to the curb through no fault of my own. I was forced down there. I could go on and on. Also, they sang to her Amazing Grace. Now, I have a cousin and his wife have an adopted daughter, sort of like Gracie would be her name. And they did hospice care in the hospital. So I walk in at some point, the daughter-in-law is holding her hand. I didn't even recognize her because it was so out of character for her to be sitting there holding vigil with her mother-in-law, my aunt. She's like, hey, Sharon, it's me. That's how out of character that was. I was like, wow, this is a show big time. No offense, because people are basically nice, but something's wrong big time. I was like, all of a sudden we're acting as if we... And the woman in the community hospice, a woman who works with community hospice in the hospital, she came in and had said, do you want me to sing a song? And what do they sing? Amazing Grace. Yeah. Who saved a wretch like me? Amazing Grace. And in a way, see how it plays into a mind game and a word game? As if Aunt Jane was spared something because her son adopted a child. As if you have to be part of a very liberal New World Order. No offense, I'm actually liberally minded. I don't love suffering. I don't want people in jail. I want to get paid, bitches. Because I am talking, this is like sci-fi out the ass, crazy stuff. So anyway, signage on newsstands all over the place, so that if you actually attempt to seek out a lawyer for something and you can't figure out, you're like, I know I've been wronged so badly. It's ridiculous how bad the situation is. It just keeps going on and on and on. And I can't find anyone to represent. Then I wind up in a workplace, and they created a hostile workplace by choosing to pretend that a hole in a bathroom floor of a yoga studio is not a big deal. Oh, it's been there forever. No big deal. By the toilet. All of a sudden it appeared over Thanksgiving. And I asked about it through Slack text messaging. Like, what should I put masking tape on it, just so you know it's there. Oh, no big deal. You don't even, oh, masking tape will make it look like shit. Don't do that. I'm like, what? You're not going to leave it empty while people take showers and go to the bathroom. And there's this whole, I don't care what's below. There's technically Anytime Fitness is below it. I don't know if it's a bathroom down there. It was hard to tell because the hole is only so big, so you can only see the floor below. Point being, someone could enter whatever space that is and do whatever they want. It's more the principle, and there are people who would be freaked out, like, oh, am I going to the bathroom and there's a hole right there just to see right up my woo-woo? And these people played games the entire time. I was strong enough to ignore a lot of games that they were playing. I did document all of them. And I did contact lawyers and the governor. I contacted every office. Better Business Bureau. This thing was so bad. I was like, it didn't match up though, because you would expect people from a yoga studio to be really sensitive. So I contacted a whole bunch of people about this issue. I was toyed with there. It does feel like I'm selected. And they played games and I documented everything. And I have screenshots of everything. Still, I call certain places, but they aren't sure how to create a case, like Pond Lahaki, abusive call centers, Morgan and Morgan, abusive call centers. You call in and these people don't treat you correctly. They're supposed to be sensitive to your needs. You're actually calling them. They could actually get money for helping you. They could win a case and actually benefit from helping someone who's been wronged. And lastly, I'll wind it down. This is a long video, but try to get assistance through a government agency because you've been so PTSD'd out because of so many things happening. You are guilty until proven innocent when you call in there. It is ridiculous, the abuses of these phone call centers and the people on the phone. They abuse people. They're not sitting there going, well, let me see if we can do anything for you. These are the rules. This is how our formula works. This is what you can expect. No, they use short staccato. So what? Now, what about this? They assume everybody, you call in for the first time in your life when really you've been due money for years. And I've worked a lot of jobs, so I've paid into the system for your fat asses to sit there on a call center. What is this? What is this you sent me? I'm like, I sent in all the documentation I thought I was supposed to send in. What is this? I don't know what to do with this. I sent in anything that would help my case. We have people who act like fools in these offices. I've even gone to the police precinct up here at 400 North Broad to talk about a situation. I happened to turn on my camera. This is an old Vivitar camera, not one that's like on the phone, because I was so shaken about something that happened. And it's as if my request to possibly file a report about something that happened actually at a Target store that caused me to flip out a little bit. It's as if my request fell on deaf ears. I was wondering if I could file a report because I'm tired of certain things happening when I show up to shop, get a necessity like yogurt. I'm tired of being abused. I'm tired of people standing behind me as if they're going to anally rape me and stand there while I pick through yogurt. It's beyond weird. It's not your normal, like, people aren't paying attention and they want to grab food. That's different. We know that people are in a hurry and are like, oh, let me grab this really quick. Different. You can tell the difference between people who are actually stalking and want to creep you out and someone who's like clueless or they're in a hurry. There is a difference. Oh, what do you want to do? I was hoping to file a report. Oh, what? I'm sorry. I have all of that on camera and I saved it in my file of evidence, keeping. So I just do that partly for peace of mind because I know it sounds like a lot of work, but I wound up being I actually feel like I was trained over the long course of all these years of being tortured to finally document a lot of stuff as much as you can. It's not a major burden to me. It's become a normal way of life, like brushing your teeth. And it's sort of right, the CYA file, which is save your ass file, or I don't know. Someone used to say this thing like cover your ass file. I don't have technically my ass doesn't have to be covered. I've never done anything wrong. But if people tried to make it seem like the blame should be on you, then it's like, wait a minute. It makes me feel better to document things, file things, to show like this keeps happening. What am I supposed to do? Is there anyone, Bueller, you ever going to do your jobs out there? I want to know if the lawyer system is set up for very specific people. Certain people benefit from that world. It is a very dark side of the world. A lot of ugly things happen out there. I guess I should be grateful that I'm not in worse condition. But a lot of psychological terror and torture. And I'm wondering if that world is cut out for certain people. And some people will never benefit from that world of filing lawsuits or, I don't know what to say, government world or what have you. Because those people are more robotic in nature, right? There's a whole big picture. Like, okay, well, this happened and that happened, and then this, which caused that, and then this and that. And they only want, this person's at fault, this person suffered. But you would know, like, well, there's more to it because I know that person was told to do this, that, and the other. Like, why should that person take the fall and not a whole system, not a whole hospital, as opposed to, like, who do they get to choose, or who gets their license revoked, say, in a malpractice suit, when really maybe the head honcho of the hospital is responsible for training people to do things a certain way. That would be, so anyway, I'll wind it here. This is a long one. I don't know what to say out there, but people are tortured constantly. And then this played into my gang stalking. Oh, you could file, your mom has a fistula put in your arm. You could file for a malpractice suit. That message kept coming through. And I was like, I feel like a loser because I have no idea how to do that. And then when I finally had the gumption to call a call center, I was met with people who were brusque and, not really sensitive. And you're supposed to be sensitive to people who feel like they're victims of something. And now we have Morgan & Morgan stalking by proxy on our buses, just like Lundy Law used to be. In a way, say you call Morgan & Morgan and it doesn't go through and you feel like a loser and there's money to be had somewhere. You've been wronged. But somehow your case isn't going to make anything or whatever. And all you see, maybe it bothers you it doesn't bother me that much. I also know Morgan & Morgan they're up here because I was in Gainesville, Florida. Let's just put it out there. Never once did we see Morgan & Morgan signage here in Philadelphia. All the years I was here, I didn't know Morgan & Morgan existed. I go to Gainesville, Florida, billboards all over the place. Morgan & Morgan, Morgan & Morgan, Morgan & Morgan. They had an incident at Disney World that caused their company to be created. So a family member had a major problem at Disney World, a ride accident, wound up a paraplegic or worse, dead, dismembered. And they created this practice, Morgan & Morgan. Never once did I know that they had an office up here in Philly. Apparently they have offices all around. I come back from Gainesville, Florida. Morgan & Morgan is all over the buses, all over creation, all over the place. Used to be Lundy Law. What happened? And Lundy Law shifted. They shifted to a new office. And I know this because I knew someone who used to work at Lundy Law, and someone else I knew actually had dinner with a Lundy Law guy who's dead now. And they said he was an eccentric character. That's right. So, but now, and it's like Morgan & Morgan. And I tried calling there, and we have a little snippy pant guy who thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. And instead of being sensitive, well, I discussed my situation with a call center and Social Security, because I know money is due for certain reasons. And they kept trying to switch it at the call center. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. And he knows but the guy I talked to at Morgan & Morgan was a little snippy pants. And he knew that I was probably owed money, but he wanted me to see it a certain, like, it's hard to describe how he had the conversation. He's like, okay, what did you just say? What did you just say? Repeat what you just said again. Repeat what you just said again. Repeat what you just said again. And it upset me so much because he wanted to show like I just proved that I was owed money. And here's a rule that they are ignoring in Philadelphia. There is a rule in there and you qualify under that rule. And they are ignoring it in Philadelphia. But it doesn't matter. I want them to call in and deal with those assholes. but his way of handling it just made it worse. It's hard to explain. In the end, I was like, I give up. The government is too much of a headache. Lawyers are too much of a headache. Everybody's an asshole. The world doesn't have to be this way. There are peaceful people who live in the world, and I would like to be left alone by all the morons. Go live your dirty, dark life. I'll take a private funder and never report it on taxes. I'm kidding. They'd be after my ass in a second because I'm a peaceful person, and they aren't.